Hi, I'm Scott Flowers with Cloud Ninjas. Today we're here to continue our series on the Dell PowerEdge R720xd server. In this video we're going to specifically focus on memory. Let's get going. Well, hey, thanks for stopping by today to learn a little bit more about the Dell PowerEdge R720xd server. Do us a favor, if you find this video useful, click that like and smash that subscribe. All right, well, let's hop into it. This video is going to be specifically focused on memory. We're going to show you at the end how to actually install it and upgrade it, the different channels to use if you're not fully maxing it out. We're going to go over the different speeds, the different sizes, and what types are accepted. And we're going to go over how to actually max it out, and that is not on Dell spec sheet. So we'll dive into that a little bit more here in a second. So let's just hop into the speeds. So the different speeds are 1066, 1333, 1600, and 1866. I will note with 1866 it will function properly, but it will clock down to 1600, which is the true fastest speed. As far as the different sizes, you can get a 2 gig, a 4 gig, an 8 gig, a 16 gig, a 32 gig, or all the way up to a 64 gig. And people will go, wait, a 64 gig? I didn't think a 64 gig would work on the R720xd. It doesn't show that on Dell's spec sheet. And that is true. When Dell originally released the XD, 64 gigs weren't a thing, so it just only shows up to 32 gigs. However, you can actually install 64 gigs. You need to make sure that you have an updated BIOS, and you need to make sure you're using V2 CPUs. And we tell you some good options in the first episode of this series that goes over some of the great V2s that we personally like. So we'll hop into the different types. So there's ECC Registered, known as an RDIMM, and there's Load Reduced, known as an LRDIMM. With ECC Registered, you can max out at 512 gigabytes using 1632 gigs at 1600 speed, whereas with LRDIMMs, you can get 1.5 terabytes, which is 3 times the scalability, and you can get that with 2464 gigs at 1600 speed. And that brings us to a question that we get all the time. Well, how come I can only put in 16 pieces of the ECC Registered, but you can put in 24 pieces of the LRDIMM? And that's what's known as the rank rule, and we'll show you that a little bit more as we hop inside. All right, we're going to upgrade our R720xd to 1.5 terabytes using the 64 gig LRDIMMs. So I'm going to put these to the side and go ahead and open up our server. So just make sure your latch is set to unlock. Pop the top. We're going to put it to the side over here. And then you're going to notice that we have to remove the air baffle, which is nice and simple. So we're just going to simply lift this up and just straight up and put this to the side. And you don't have to do what I'm about to do, but I like to do it. It gives you one extra room, but I want it just so you can see better for the video. We're going to go ahead and remove the fan bank over here. And so we're just going to go ahead and pop this out. And now we have complete access to all the DIMMs. So as we had kind of discussed in the first video in the series, this is CPU 1, this is CPU 2. CPU 1 controls the 12 DIMM slots over here, and CPU 2 controls the 12 DIMM slots over here. So the two whites that you see that are touching, this is the start. Well, I shouldn't say the start, but this is kind of where you see the division between the two different CPUs and the sets that they control. So this is the start of the channel, whereas the start's over here. So I wanted to just clarify that, and we'll get into that more. So one of the things you'll notice is that all these tabs, they're color-coded, and there's a reason for that. So essentially, white, as you see right here, this is A1. White is the first DIMM slot in the channel, and then that's followed by black and then green. So the three of those together is one memory channel. So if you look really quick, you'll notice there's 4 memory channels per CPU, and there's 3 DIMM slots per memory channel. And again, that's the white, black, and green. And the 3 DIMM slots per channel is really what's key, and one of the things I think a lot of people will be wanting to watch this video for, and that's what affects the rank rule, because the rank rule states that for your memory channel, you can only have 8 ranks per channel. Okay, 8 ranks is the max that you can get. So if you look at a 32 gig ECC registered module, it is a quad rank module. All ECC registered 32 gig DDR3s are quad rank. So you do some quick math, 4, 8, 12. Right there, you break the rank rule. So essentially, you cannot put anything in the green DIMM slot if you are using 32 gig DDR3 ECC register, which is again how you get to 16, because you're basically skipping all the greens and just putting them in the whites and blacks, the first 2 DIMM slots, and essentially that will get you to 512 gigabytes using 16 32 gigs. Whereas with LRDIMMs, yes, they are also quad rank, but LRDIMMs are a special newer technology. It actually appears as a dual rank module, so you can completely load it up and not have to worry at all about the rank roll. So there's some definite scalability advantages to LRDIMMs over ECC registered if you are trying to max out your system overall. Now, if you're using some of the smaller modules in the sense of like an 8 gig DIMM or a 16 gig DIMM, those modules are dual rank. And so you don't have to, again, worry about it. You can completely max them out, use all 24 slots. This is a specific issue only when you are trying to use 32 gig ECC registered. That's when it's a problem because of the quad rank, okay? So now we're going to show you a little bit more about all the different memory channels and how they are set up. So white, as we discussed, is the first slot of the channel. So this is A1, and then you'd come over to the next white. This is A2, and then you come to the outside over here. This is A3. And this is A4. So those are the first 4 channels. And then you come over here, and this is B1, B2, B3, B4. Okay, so if you were only putting in 8 memory modules, and you have 2 CPUs, of course, if you're putting in 8 memory modules, you want to put them in the 8 white DIMM slots. And people ask, well, why do you put them in the 8 white DIMM slots as opposed to just say like the first 8 DIMM slots? And the reason is you want to have a nice even distribution across all of your memory channels. You want them all doing an even workload. So you really just want to have a nice balance for your configuration on how you're putting your RAM in, okay? So now the next step is, let's say you want to put in, say, 16 modules. Well, that's when you go to the black DIMM slots. This is A5, A6, A7, A8, come back around, B5, B6, B7, B8. Okay, and then now if you're completely maxing it out, then you don't have to really worry about the channels at all because you're going to completely fill them up. But we'll just go ahead and walk through it anyways. This is going to be A9, A10, A11, A12, B9, B10, B11, B12. Okay, so that's how you would actually do it. Now I'm going to physically do it right now. I'm going to pop these back open. I like to make sure all my tabs are open before I install the modules, just because I don't want to be fumbling around and accidentally drop a module and do anything silly. So I just try to make it as easy as possible for me. So we are going to go ahead and install our first 64 gig. Now, one of the things I also want to note before we put this in, there is a notch right here in, I like to say in the middle, but it's not in the middle, and that's the point. There's a notch right here known as a key, and this key, because it's not perfectly centered, is an issue that you just have to make sure that you properly line up your DIMM, and they do switch. If we'll scroll in right now, it does switch. If you see this black notch that's coming up, on this side it's over here, on this side it's over here. So I see where people will install it facing the wrong way. They're just in a good groove, they're loading, they're loading, they're loading, and they just don't notice that it flip-flops, and the next thing you know, you're busting the leads, you're damaging a DIMM. So that's one of just the most common user errors that I always tell people to watch out for. The next user error that I like to point out, we're putting this in A1 right now. The module looks like it's sitting in there. I'm not holding it, right? So it feels like it's in, but it's not properly seated and it's not fully in. You want to hear these 2 clicks? So those 2 clicks, and you can also see that the tabs have come completely in, and essentially what they do is they grab the notches on the side of the DIMM and they pull it down to make sure the leads are fully into the DIMM slot. And so the problem that will happen is sometimes you'll have a DIMM that's just sticking out slightly like that, and you think it's in, but it's not fully in. And I always just say, hear those clicks, and make sure it is fully in. So A1, now we're going to come over here to A2. And again, make sure you hear the clicks. Then we're going to come to the outside, and it's going to flip-flop, so I want to point that out. And this is going to be A3. Click, click. A4. Click, click. And then again, if you were doing the whole thing, and just for time's sake, I'm just going to do it over here. If you're doing the whole thing, like I said, you want to come to the whites and fill up all the whites, but just for time's sake, I'm going to just assume the whites are already full, and I'm going to want to just kind of focus on the channels. So we're going to hit A5 right here, and you'll start to notice that that green is left open over and over again, because again, it is the third DIMM slot in the channel. And that's the important point to notice, is just how to properly configure these. And green is the odd man out here, and you are filling up your whites and your blacks if you are putting in 16 DIMMs. Okay. Now again, if you're putting in 8, you are just going to do the white DIMMs, assuming you have 2 CPUs, and that'll be the proper configuration. Okay. So for the sake of time, I'm going to fast forward, load this completely up, and be right back. Alright, so we have officially loaded this up. We got 1.5 terabytes of RAM, which I just love the way that sounds. We got 1.5 terabytes of RAM in our R720xd. It's definitely one of the things that I always recommend when people are using a machine that is slightly older and they're looking to increase the overall performance. Generally, I ask, 3 questions, and there's a lot of things you can do, but these are the top 3 questions I ask. First, what's your RAM? Because you probably should upgrade it, because that's going to be really great for your overall performance. Are you using hard drives or using solid state drives? Because solid state drives is going to be a better way to go. And what CPU do you have? Generally speaking, the CPU is ahead of everything else, so everything is trying to catch up to that. So that's not generally where your lag is, but you could have a low-end CPU, and getting an upgrade on this is relatively cheap, honestly, for the CPUs. So it could be a good upgrade between those 3 things to really just extend the life of your 720xd, which is one of the reasons I imagine some people are here, is to try to figure out how to get the most out of this system, right? So cool. Well, I appreciate you stopping by. If you need any custom built servers, if you need any upgrades for CPUs, RAM, SSDs, we custom build HP, Dell, Supermicro. We'll do Gigabyte, ASRock, Tyan, Asus, you name it. We do a ton of different systems. We'd love the opportunity to earn your business. Thanks again for stopping by. Please email us at sales@cloudninjas.com. Take care, guys.